Testing 1, 2. Okay, let's see here. Do this. Okay. Bring that in. Nope. Okay. Here you have a low voltage diode and a high voltage diode. Give me a second here. There's your low voltage diode, and that's your high voltage diode. So out the high voltage diode is where the flyback exits the circuit. That's where it leaves the circuit into the charge battery. We're going to trace out this whole circuit. So here's your charge battery, your run battery, sorry, 12 volt. It's the Bedini SG circuit. So out of the positive side is positive battery energy. Going to leave this way. And we'll make the negative energy, the negative side of the drain of the drive battery will be, let's say, dark green. And your negative side of the run battery will go this way. And of course, until this transistor closes, it's not able to reach the coil. No worries. The transistor will close and the positive energy will flow through the coil, the drive winding of the Bedini bifilar. And it'll flow through the transistor when it closes. What makes it close? At the base of the transistor, you're going to send a 2 to 5 volt low current signal right here. You're going to use this magnet to do that, and this trigger winding. This coil of gauge 28, 150 feet. It's a bifilar. These two coils are bifilar, wound. One is 26 gauge, the other is 28. Let me just put that in there. Okay, so it's bifilar wound. And the magnet up here on the rotor, is going to send 2 to 5 volts into the orange coil, this magnet. It's going to send 2 to 5 volts through this coil when the rotor spins it over the bifilar. We're counting on this coil to pick up the magnet field and turn it into some voltage to trigger the base here. So based on the coil winding and the magnet pass on the trigger winding, the orange coil, you will have a plus up here on the coil, the trigger coil, and you will have a minus down here on the trigger coil. And the minus will run across here over to the emitter of the transistor, and the plus will go through the resistors with low current and hit the base. And when that happens, the transistor closes the gate, and now you can energize the red coil, the drive winding. And after the magnet up here moves along, then the voltage is removed from the base, and the transistor opens up the gate. And the drive winding no longer receives charge. And when it's not receiving a charge, its field is collapsing. And when you energize this red coil, you had a plus up here and you had a minus down here. Well, that's going to change when the field collapses. The polarity is going to flip on this drive winding, and you're going to have a minus up here and a plus down here now. And the plus will go out this way through the diode, the high voltage diode, and hit the plus terminal of your battery. The minus will go this way to the minus terminal of your battery. And that's how the coil flies back in reverse polarity into the charged battery. That's the process of this pulse motor. It's a pulse motor modified to capture radiant spikes. It's a milliamp motor. Like Bedini said, it's not a lot of amps, it's just milliamps. So that's pretty much how that operates, and that's how the flyback gets in there and all that into the charge battery. That's how you recycle the reverse polarity flyback into the charge battery. Now, how does this diode, what's it doing? It's a low voltage diode, and what it's doing is it's making sure that there's a positive here and a negative here, DC pulse, because it's a half wave. It's one diode, so it's only rectifying one half of the wave. If you want to rectify the other half, you have to place another diode this way. Right here. But it's not necessary because you're not going to get a full DC signal anyway, because the magnet up here is passing over the coil. It's not, it's pulsing. Each magnet is passing and creating a pulse of AC inductance into the coil. And Bedini said he's using this diode as a clamp. So there's something called a DC clamping circuit. And anyway, it just makes it more of a DC signal, in my opinion, to make a more consolidated pulse to the base here, because you're going to have your positive come out this way from the trigger winding, and if the diode's down here, it stops it from flowing that way. Okay, for one, it stops your positive from flowing this direction on the circuit. I'm talking about the positive that you generated here with this magnet pass. Okay, that positive is right here, and it's going to flow down here. And it's going to try to go this way, and it's going to try to go this way. Well, thanks to this diode, it can't go this way. And it's forced to go this way. That's the positive. Now the negative of this same coil from the trigger signal negative is going to go this way. And because, only positive can flow this way. So what is the negative going to do? It's going to go this way. And it's going to hit the emitter where it's supposed to. So that's kind of why that's there. In my opinion, that's exactly what this thing is doing. It's creating a DC. I mean, if you had no diode here, then what you're doing is shorting out the coil without creating DC or AC. I think you need this diode there to have it work. So yeah, that's that. We went over the flyback here, how it gets to the battery in reverse polarity. You first put a positive here from your run battery, and a negative here on this coil. You charge it by closing the switch. You open the switch. The polarity flips from negative here to positive here. So the coil inverts its polarity. Positive goes out this diode here, a high voltage diode. This is a high voltage spike of positive and a high voltage spike of negative. And the negative is going to the negative side of the battery. Without taking the negative to the negative side of the battery, I'm not so sure the battery will receive the charge, but there are experiments to say otherwise. That's a quick overview of the Bedini circuit. The next video, I will go over how I take this Bedini circuit right here and multiply it into two Bedini circuits to run two coils and to trigger the two coils with a double pole double throw relay. I'll try to go over that tonight or tomorrow. Hope that made some sense. Yes, sir. This is the Bedini circuit. What's up, Abe? Whole circuit run motor in series. Yeah, I mean it's a pulse motor modified to capture the radiant spike into another battery. Yeah, it's great. So with the double pole, double throw Bedini modification that I'm doing, I'm going to generate a pulse on one coil and send it over to. I'm going to generate a pulse on one coil with one battery and send the flyback from that coil to a different battery, and then flip the poles on the relay to generate a pulse on another coil that's attached to the battery that just received the flyback from the previous coil. And then that coil gets energized by that battery, the battery that just received the flyback from the other coil. So the next coil gets energized by that battery right after it receives flyback from the previous coil. So it's controversial. People say you can't really send high potential charge into a battery while it's being drained. I just want to say something here on that. Technically speaking, neither one of the two batteries in the double pole system are being charged at the same time or drained at the same time. So the battery that's receiving charge is not giving charge when it's receiving charge. And the other battery that's receiving charge also is not giving charge when it's receiving charge. So that is happening because of the double pole, double throw relay is doing that. So it's making sure only one coil is receiving charge at a time, and that coil gets disconnected before the next coil gets energized. So when that first coil gets disconnected, the flyback event just took place right then and there. And yeah, I'll go over that circuit later. But it follows the concept here in the Bedini SG circuit that you see here of capturing the flyback. Links in the to join in the description if you want to talk about this circuit or discuss any open source ideas. I'll go over one more thing here. Let me see here. Try to bring that up. Hmm. Set. The two coil system. Ah, okay. So two coil A, two coil B. Okay. What's the name? Double pole, double two coil. Ah, there it is. All right. Maybe I'll just do this now. This is a good image to work with. So, where is it? Okay. This is the double pole, double throw relay, which I'm going to use to energize a coil to generate flyback spike and send into an alternate battery. I'll draw that out. So here you see this coil on the right is red being charged. Pin 5 and 6 is the DC 12-volt source. Red is your positive. Green is your negative. And you can see the red is channeling through the relay. Let me change this color. You see the positive from your source in the relay position now is channeling here, giving positive. And your negative is channeling this way, giving your negative here. So now that we established that the charge is giving a positive here and a negative there, we're going to also understand now that when this charge is removed, this will become a negative and this will become a positive. So orange is the current charge and blue is, when it reverses polarity. So if we draw some diode in here, and we know that this negative is going to become a positive later. So we just put a high voltage diode facing this way, 1N4007, and tie that to a battery. And that's your positive of your battery. And we know that this end is going to become a negative when the charge is removed. So we can tap off of it here. And connect to the negative side of the battery. And that's what's going to happen when you remove charge here. So if I go to the other image right here, now the coil is green. And the relay is flipped. See, the relay's to the right here. And when it flips to the left, the pins 5 and 6, or the source is no longer touching this coil. It's going the other way. It's going to the other coil. It's going right here. And the negative is going to the other side of the coil from the battery. And that happens when you energize pins 7 and 8. The relay will flip to the left as it is now. When you remove power on pins 7 and 8, the relay will flip to the right. And you can see that here, see? Pins 7 and 8 have no power. Relay is in default position. Power flips to the left, sends energy to the other coil. Now, when it flips to the left and sends energy to the other coil, that is when this positive, which you can see it was connected here before, and when this switches there, it becomes a positive. So this was a positive before. Now it's a negative because the coil has lost charge and it's flying back negative and positive, like so. It's reversing polarity. So the positive is going to go, into your battery. Sorry. At this point, you have your battery, and you can put the negative on the right. Or let's just do it like this: negative, positive. And your battery. And it goes like that. So that's how it flies back into the battery. And that's basically it. So all I'm doing is putting a diode here, 1N4007, on both coils. Okay, now you're asking where does the power come from to run these coils? So this same 12-volt battery, there's two of them. You can put them in parallel, it doesn't matter, or separate. But so the circuit shows how to wire it up correctly. I'm just going over the function of it. And so yeah, this is the flyback here in green. It's flying back into this battery. And the other coil is receiving charge now, but you're still going to have a high voltage diode connected here. And another connection here. Okay. Now you're asking if the battery's negative terminal is connected there and it traces through here and it touches the positive of your battery. So there you go. You cannot put these batteries in parallel. And you have to use that circuit, the double pole flyback circuit, Bedini modified. It's on my channel. It's the main circuit on my channel. So you cannot put these batteries in parallel for that reason, because the negative of one battery, if you have them in parallel and their negatives and positives are touching, the negative will touch the positive of the other battery through here. Okay. So you don't have them in parallel, you have them separate. That's the original design anyway. So I recant what I said earlier about putting them in parallel. So there's two separate batteries. And that's how they're wired, as you see here, to pick up the flyback. And you can see from it, well, you see here, you can see how when the switch flips to the right, this coil will get charged. Then it flips to the left, and this coil will lose charge and fly back into the battery. So that's the basic concept. Just charge the coil, remove the charge, let it fly back into a different battery. Let me bring up another thing here. Let me bring up the actual circuit. Okay. There it is. Present. Do that. Present. Okay. That's the actual circuit, right? So, and the diodes are set up like that to capture the flyback. There's no need for the low voltage diode as in the original Bedini circuit because there's no trigger winding here. It's being controlled by double pole, double throw system. But you can set up 4 transistors to do the same function as a double pole, double throw relay. And if you look at the left side battery and the right side battery, you can see the 2 relays above them are switched to the left and they're not touching the terminals of the battery. That's because only one battery receives charge at a time. So here you go, and boom, the battery on the left, now the 2 relays are now touching the battery. They came down onto the terminals of the battery, and the battery on the left has a coil above it, and that coil is now getting the charge. And in a split second here, those 2 relays on that battery are going to, on the left battery, are going to open up. And there you have it. Meanwhile, the battery on the right was inactive during this process, was not giving charge to that coil or doing anything. Those 2 switches on the battery on the right were always open when the battery on the left was doing its process. So when the battery on the left was giving charge to the coil and removing charge from the coil by the use of 2 switches, switching the positive and the negative of the battery to that coil, that function has to be finished before the battery on the right proceeds. And this whole thing can be handled very efficiently with a double pole, double throw relay. And that's exactly what the relay does. And now the battery on the right, the 2 arms close down and give charge to the coil above it. In a split second from now, and notice the battery on the left is not giving charge to the coil above it. It's inactive. It's just waiting to receive flyback from the coil on the right. And then here you go. The coil on the right now turns green and it flies back to the battery on the left. You can see the arrows. You can see the pole flips on the coil as well in the video. That helps people see what's going on so they can see that when one battery is charging a coil, it's not receiving a charge. And that's the bottom line. But you're going to have to look at this closer to see that that's what's going on, to verify that. Yeah. It's confusing, but once you start getting a grip for what's going on, it becomes clear. Kind of like the Bedini SG circuit, you know. When I first built that thing, I was like, didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. All I was just following directions, you know. And I even got it working after a few weeks, you know, of trial and error. And I finally get it running, and I still don't know what I'm doing or what it's doing. And literally, you know, a few years later, I realized this thing called flyback and did a little more research on what exactly is a flyback generator, how it operates. So if you energize a single coil and remove the power from it, it flips polarity with a high voltage spike. And that's basically how they build those buck converters, you know. They have a little coil in there and they're just switching it with DC power, a low voltage DC signal, to create a radiant spike in there and get a higher voltage a higher voltage, which they can then, you know, rectify into a capacitor and give you your higher voltage DC. So that's the same concept as the buck converter. I mean, the buck converter is doing what this circuit's doing. It's just creating a higher voltage from a lower voltage by utilizing a switching event on an inductor. So you need capacitor in parallel with your two. Yes, I agree. But Bedini kept saying to do it without capacitors and try to send the radiant back to the source as quickly as possible without capacitors. He specifically said that.
Two ways to do this. You can build it up in a capacitor, catch it, discharge it into the battery, and then you want to repeat this process over and over and over. But what you really want to do is you want to go as fast as you can without a capacitor, for the simple fact is you want to put a lot of this radiant energy to the source.
Testing. Yeah, so what did he say there?
You got two ways to do this. You can build it up in a capacitor, catch it, discharge it into the battery, and then you want to repeat this process over and over and over. But what you really want to do is you want to go as fast as you can without a capacitor, for the simple fact is you want to put a lot of this radiant energy to the source.
So there you have that, And I kind of agree that, capacitors are good too, though. Capacitors are good. I don't have a problem with using capacitors, even though he said that, But I think he said that because the radiant spike will, because he wants the radiant spike to hit the battery, not the capacitor. He wants the battery to get, tuned to the radiant spike, or tuned by the radiant spike. And that's why I think he's saying that. I don't hear no audio. So yeah, that's the double throw relay on the right, showing how it, it's energizing the two coils back and forth. So you can see the two coils are not being energized at the same time, or neither are they flying back at the same time into either one of the batteries. So conveniently, and technically speaking, the battery is, neither one of these two batteries are giving charge when they're receiving charge, when they're receiving flyback charge. Although it's happening fast, they're not actually giving charge when they're receiving charge. So you could speed the frequency up and it might seem like the battery's giving charge when it's receiving charge, but it's not, because you can see the switches are completely disconnected from the battery. Both the plus and the minus of the battery disconnect from the coil that it's charging. So I'm not switching one pole. I'm switching both poles of the battery. And that was necessary to get the diodes to connect between the two batteries, so that the flyback can go right away, be connected, be readily connected to go into the other battery. You need to have the circuit there in, statically positioned you can't switch for the flyback event. It's just too quick. So I had to have a circuit that was permanently set up to capture the flyback, and the Bedini method made it possible to organize to organize this circuit in a way What made it possible was the extra coil. Without the second coil, I would not be able to do this. The second coil makes it possible for a lot of things to happen. For one, it makes it possible for neither one of the batteries to provide charge when they're receiving charge. And it also makes it possible to provide a circuit for the flyback events between the two coils and the two batteries. Yeah, I'm burnt out. I'm gonna need questions to keep going, like, because I'm not sure how to, explain this any further. I'm not trying to put nobody on a wild goose chase to replicate something that won't work. If you want a way for me to replicate it, by all means, do that. But I don't, I'm not concerned about whether this will work or not. I've already done a similar version to this with one source and a capacitor bank to handle the flyback as an intermediary between the source. And the double pole, double throw relay was handling the rotations, and as well as the charge to one coil, not two. That's the Newman thing I'm trying to do. But the double pole, double throw relay on one coil will also flip the polarity on one coil. You can wire it to flip the polarity on one coil and reverse your fields to push a shaft with a north-south magnet twice per 360 degrees. In other words, on one polarity, plus and minus to the coil, you get 180 push, and on the other polarity, minus plus to the coil, on the other 180, then you get push as well. So there's no free spinning going on at all, and it's completely 360 degrees of push. And it's like having two hands, one hand over the north, one hand over the south, and turning it 180 degrees, and then flipping the polarity on the coil is like flipping your hands to keep turning it from both sides. So the double pole, double throw works very efficiently for doing that as well. It works for running two coils in this circuit here also. So it'll do that also. It'll do this other system with two coils. Anything else the double pole relay can do, I'm not sure. I haven't figured out any other use for it other than reversing the polarity on one coil or charging up two coils with one polarity. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to end the stream here, and I'll see you guys again, and we can hopefully get some questions going on here. Over and out. See you later, ape.